How to win any argument. This is very simple. Who loves to argue? Give me some amens here. Who's married to someone who loves to argue? You know, who has friends who loves to argue? Who has family members when y'all get together, do nothing but argue? After a few drinks, you know, after the hugs, a few drinks, now next thing you know, you're arguing and stuff. And you love to argue, or they all argue, or they just can't stop. All right, well, I'm going to show you how to win any argument. And it doesn't matter if it's your coworker, your boss, your husband, your wife. This is how you win. Now hear me out, because it sounds so simple, but it's really the key of winning any argument. And it'll bring you a lot of happiness. So if you're taking notes, if you're one of my patients, write this down. Take notes, you know. This tip will bring you a lot of happiness. Okay? And here's tip number 1. In order to win any argument, this is the big tip. Do not argue. Do not engage in the argument. And you go, shit, that's dumb. I can't believe I'm tuning in for this. But this is the truth. Nothing frustrates someone who wants to argue more than another person who won't argue back. You can't have an argument. You need 2 people to argue. You can't have an argument with someone who won't argue. Okay? So right there, you've already won. Because they're already frustrated. Does that make sense, y'all? If they're trying to bait you in and you won't fall for the bait, that just pisses them off more. So tip number 1 to win any argument is don't argue with them. Walk away. Just ignore them. Just stare at them. Just say yes or no. Pisses them off. Nonstop. All right? But Dr. Vuong, you know, that's hard to do. I get it. Someone's really like throwing zingers at you. They're really criticizing you. You really want to like give it back at them, right? Here's truth number 2. Truth number 2 is this. The reason why you can't win any argument is you'll never be able to convince someone that you're right. You will never convince anybody that you're right. Why is this? It's because no one wants to be wrong. That's a truth. Give me some amen. Show of hands. Who wants to be wrong? Who wants to ever be told they're wrong? I never want to be told I'm wrong. Do you want to be told you're wrong? Do your kids want to be told you're wrong? Does your husband want to be told you're wrong? He's wrong or she's wrong. Your sister. Nobody wants to be told they're wrong. Right? Nobody. But the second that you have to prove yourself right, guess what? You've automatically made someone wrong. Or you think you're right, therefore they must be wrong. And they will defend that position. They will dig in their heels. They will come out swinging. They will growl larger. They will like really bear down their fangs and their claws on you. They will really bow up. They will really try to make you wrong. Because nobody likes to be wrong. That's why you can't ever win an argument. That's why political debates are stupid. That's why any argument over politics is stupid. This is why dinner conversations that go into personal lives or personal decisions, oh, they shouldn't do this, they should. That's terrible. If someone's trying to do something that they think is right in their life and mama or grandmother says, oh, that's stupid, they shouldn't be doing that, that makes the other person feel terrible about themselves. They're making the wrong decision. I mean, and they don't want that. So they're going to defend that position. Does that make sense? And it could be they're trying to defend an abusive husband. They might not know he's abusive. And you're telling them that they need to leave him because he's abusive? They don't want to hear it. They can't hear it. They don't see that side of it. But their natural instinct, first and foremost, is to say, I'm not wrong. And the second that someone says, I'm not wrong, or believes that, they've shut off. You can make the most beautiful, eloquent argument, the reasons why you're right, and they still won't see it. You could catch the cheating husband with online Facebook and emails and texts, and he will still defend his position. He will still try to act like he's innocent because of that natural instinct of not trying to be wrong. Okay? So this was kind of a short summary, short tips, but it's true. The only way to win an argument is to not argue. Because you can never convince, tip number 2, you can never convince anybody that that you're right, because that automatically makes them be wrong. And tip number 3 is the second you stop arguing, you will have a lot of peace in your life, because you'll realize it's a dead end. You will never get anywhere. You can't win. No one will agree to defeat. It's a zero-sum game. I mean, like, you will never win. This is why war in the Middle East is stupid. This is why us bombing them and them, but I mean, it's terrible. And we kill each other over these arguments that we think we're so right. This is why talk about religion is silly. You'll never convince someone who's an atheist that God really lives. You'll never convince someone who has faith and has seen the miracles of God that there's no such thing as God, that it is all natural selection. See, it's dumb, right? You can't ever win an argument. It's a dead-end path. And it's a path that will only lead you to more misery and suffering, divorce, anger, bitterness, feuds, stabbings, guns, murders, rockets, bombs. Your little argument with your 9-year-old or your teenager who stayed out past curfew, or your wife, is nothing more than a small nugget compared to this huge, huge thing that's happening when you enter war. Think about that. There's no difference between war and your argument with your spouse or your teenager. It's just on a much bigger scale. Now, if I'm telling you that, and I'm telling you that you can't win an argument with your kids or your spouse, then there's no way we will ever win an argument with the Middle East, Muslim, any terrorists. There's no way you're going to convince a Trump supporter that Trump is crazy. Just like there's no way you're going to convince a Bernie Sanders supporter that he's too old. I mean, people don't want to be proven wrong. And it will cause you a lot of suffering. All right? And what you need to do is just get away from that. You got to ask yourself, why am I arguing? Why am I arguing? It's because of our own ego. It's our own ego to try to prove that we're right, that we're smarter, that what we say is important, that our point is the correct point of view. But it's not. Everybody's entitled to their own point of view. Everybody's entitled to make mistakes, or to make wrong comments, or have bad relationships. Because last night's talk, remember last night's talk? You're responsible for your own life. You're responsible for your own life. And if that's the truth, then your sister who's in a bad marriage, she's responsible for that. You will never convince her that she needs to leave until she sees for herself that she's ready to go. Does that make sense? Okay? This is an important topic because I see it. Well, it sounds like fun. Like people say, Dr. Vuong, that's what my family do. We get together and we like to discuss politics. We like to do this. We like to do that. Yeah, and that's why half your family won't talk to the other half, or everyone stresses out during the holidays. It's a lot of suffering. And I'll give you another example that we think is so silly, is so benign, but it's not. Sports. A Denver Broncos fan cannot convince who are they playing? Carolina Panthers fan that their team is better or wrong, or they got gypped. And you say, oh, no, Dr. Vuong, this is just all for fun and games. But it's not. People get beat up and robbed for jerseys. They get beat up and stabbed and murdered at football stadiums. Referees get beat up. Coaches get beat up by parents. Over what? Over nothing. Over something really silly, very trivial. They end up in jail. They have it on their record. Someone's life was lost. Someone was permanently maimed or disabled. It's not a small thing. It can cause a lot of rift within a family. Someone's feelings could get really hurt if you take it too far. It's not a small thing. So, I used to be a big football fan, and I let all that go. I looked at my life, and I said, what is an argument? What is the definition of argument? It's basically me trying to prove my point of view or my opinion as being right over somebody else. And that will cause suffering because no one wants to be proven wrong. So this is hard for a surgeon to do, because that's the number one job of doctors and surgeons, is to try to prove each other wrong, to one up, to say that your research is better or this is and that's better. And conferences can be full of arguments that lead to nothing. Anger, people digging in. I see it all the time. I watch it. I watch it amongst my colleagues. And they think they can have lively discussions and that it's okay, they're still friends. Truth of the matter is, no, once they leave, they're talking shit behind each other's back. I see it all the time. And you see it in your family members. All right? So, I'm going to wrap it up. The only way to win an argument, number one, is to not engage in the argument. Because the person who likes to argue hates it when the other person won't argue. So you've already won. You've already frustrated them. Number two, you will never win an argument, because that means you have to prove, when you prove you're right, that means you're proving someone else wrong. And nobody wants to be proven wrong. And number three, arguments lead to dead ends. No one will win. It never resolves anything. It only makes the conflict worse and escalate things. Grudges, war. That's all war is. It's a series of arguments over millennia, over decades, over years, hundreds of years. Right? Think about that. That's what that is. And why do we? And what good is it? It's zero. There's no good comes out in an argument. Even if you decide you're right, you've proven beyond doubt you're right. You've damaged your relationship with the other person permanently. Think about that for a second. When you've won that argument, assuming you think you won, you really did win, you've damaged your relationship with that other person. I promise you. Doesn't matter that you're their boss. It doesn't matter, because you've lost their respect. It doesn't matter if you're married to them. It doesn't matter if you're the pastor. It doesn't matter anything. Okay? You've damaged your relationship with that other person. So, thank you guys.